Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Kathy Sepiel, and I am the Land Protection Manager for the environmental organization Save the Sound, which is a member of the Six Lakes Park Coalition. And on behalf of the coalition, I'd like to welcome you this evening. We're really glad to see so many people turn out to learn more about Six Lakes. We had about 100 people come out in November for a perimeter walk around the property, and we're happy tonight to offer this virtual version of that walk so that those of you who weren't able to join us in November, or maybe you were with us but you want to learn a little bit more, are able to do so. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We have a Q&A button. You should be able to see that at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to drop your questions about Six Lakes and about the presentation into the Q&A, and I will be monitoring that and handing your questions off to our speakers at the end during the Q&A section. As you saw, we're recording this evening, and we will send a follow-up email to everyone who is registered so that you can either pass along the recording to others or listen to it again yourselves. Also, we're in Zoom's meeting mode this evening, not webinar mode, and we did that on purpose so that you would be able to see each other if you wanted to. But if you would prefer to just see the speaker, what you can do is go to the top right corner of your screen and click the view icon. It's in the upper right corner, and then select side by side speaker. And that will just put our speaker next to the slide for you, and you won't be able to see anybody else. And then last thing before I introduce our speakers tonight, I just want to mention to you that the coalition has a petition. It's called Petition to Restore and Conserve Six Lakes Olin Powder Farm as an Act of Restorative Justice for Southern Hamden and a Park for the Benefit of All. And in a few moments, I'll drop the link to that petition in the chat so that if you're interested in signing that, once you hear a little bit more about Six Lakes, we would love to have you sign that petition. So let me introduce our speakers for this evening. First, I'd like to introduce Justin Farmer. He's a lifelong Hamden resident who served 6 years on Hamden's Legislative Council, representing the 5th District, which includes Newhall, Whitneyville, and Edgewood. And he is currently a community organizer. And I'd also like to introduce Elizabeth Hayes, also a Newhall resident who serves on Hamden's Democratic Town Committee and on the Inland Wetlands Commission in Hamden. She was an environmental and health advocate for the large-scale cleanup of the Newhall neighborhood, which took place roughly from 2009 to 2015, some portions of which actually still continue today. And I just want to mention one other thing before we get started and hand it over to Justin, which is that you should have received a confirmation email from us today, which includes a PDF map of the walk that we did in November and that we're kind of recreating tonight. And so if you would like, you can open that map from your email and follow along. We have it on one slide, but it's only going to be up briefly. And for those of you especially who aren't really oriented to where we're located, you might find it useful to refer to that. So with that, I'll hand it over to Justin.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Good evening to you all. I'm Justin Farmer. I'm part of the Six Lakes Steering Committee. Would love to thank Save the Sound for all the work they're doing, partnering on this. Also, want to thank ACES for their contribution when we actually did the physical tour. ACES school hosted us and gave us snacks and gave us a place to stay warm in the cold. So thank you to ACES, and thank y'all all tonight for joining us. As Kathy mentioned, y'all should have gotten a PDF of this map that I have on the screen right now. And so I'll give you a second to pull it up if you don't have it. But tonight I'll be going through the different areas, and I'll let you know where we are. But we'll be starting at ACEs at 1, um, and then go through the rest of the numbers. I'll highlight that number 4 is where the potential base entrance is for the potential park. 5, 6, 7 are the Farmington Canal Trail. And then, of course, uh, 10 is Whitney Center, which we have a ton of great advocates there working on this project. So I want to ground us with, we started working in earnest on this project about 3 years ago. Community members came together um, and decided to start to vision what to do with this property. This property has been inaccessible for the last 50 years. And so the Hamden Land Trust was started originally to tackle the problem of having this space be green space. And so we have community members from all over Hamden and all around trying to advocate for opening this parcel back up to the community. So there are 11 schools in a 2-mile radius of this property. Um, and so you have the elementary schools, Spring Glen, Ridge Hill, Church Street, Dunbar, Helen. And then you have Hamden High School, you have Sacred Heart, ACES, of course, Hamden Hall, my university, Southern Connecticut, uh, for all the fellow owls out there. And then we have our Keefe Community Center. And so this is a really great opportunity to connect our communities, to start to have young people think about the outdoors and to think about, you know, ecological restoration. So, you know, there's a great multitude of things on this property. Uh, this is a picture from when we did the uh, uh, the actual perimeter walk, and so as Kathy mentioned, we had over 100 people out. Um, there is glacial kettles from when here used to be a frozen tundra, and so there's natural bogs that float, moss bogs that float in the ponds, which is something that is not really seen in the region. The park, potential park, is close to New Haven and East Rock, and this parcel of land has been identified as a potential green space as early as the 1800s by Frederick Law Olmsted. He was a very, very famous uh, 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 landscape designer. His father uh, uh, did Central Park, and so he identified this property as part of the Emerald Necklace. And so from here, from Hamden all the way to the valley, all the way up to Wallingford, they identified different parcels of green space that could connect together, bring communities together, and have people enjoy the outdoors. So this effort that we're all a part of is 200 years in the making. Uh, Many of y'all wonder why it's called the Pine Swamp or the Olin Powder Farm. It initially was a swampland filled with pines. And so in the late 1800s, Winchester Repeating Arms took over the property, built some dams, and helped flood the rest of the area to create a very moist atmosphere to store gunpowder. Because one of the big problems you have with gunpowder is if it ignites or catches fire, large explosions happen. And so they took over this property and really ran and used test ammunition, stored ammunitions there all the way up until 1931, where Olin Corporation bought out Winchester and took over the property and continued to do munitions testing, storing of gunpowder uh, uh, throughout World War I and World War II, and eventually uh, started to dump debris there. So throughout the 60s, we know that Olin dumped chemicals, coal ash, battery waste, a whole myriad of things were dumped on this property. And so in the early 2000s, uh, community advocates like Miss Hayes got together and were advocating for restoration and cleanup of the neighborhood as the town decided to uh, expand the old middle school, and they realized that contamination was a big problem, not only for the middle school site, but for the neighborhood at large. And so there was an agreement made that Olin would come back to the table and clean up this property. Uh, Olin is fully responsible for cleanup and restoration. Most of the heavy pollution has come from Olin. Olin had a dissent decree from the EPA back in 1974 to clean up the property and has failed to do so. Um, Once this potential property is cleaned up, um, there's a myriad of opportunities, right, that we can envision together. Um, Not only that it connects Newhall and Southern Hamden together, uh, but it connects the region together. And so this is the opportunity to, bring about a greater change in our community and have restorative justice. So we just headed out of ACES Park, ACES School, and here's the aerial view of the whole entire neighborhood. And so to the south, you have Newhall. Uh, to the north, you have Spring Glen. Uh, to the east, you have Dunbar Davenport and Whitney Center. And to the west, you have Dixwell Avenue. And so as we walk down virtually at, out of ACES and down to Leader Hill Road, there's a break in the fence. And so this property is 102.5 acres. It is a very large parcel of land. There's not that much green space untouched in this area, such as this. And so there's many breaks in the fence. Many community members have gone about trespassing to access this land, but we're hoping with Deep and with Olin that we can clean up this property and have people really enjoy and be part of uh, the restoration of this property, but also to be able to fellowship and be in community. As I mentioned before, coal ash, battery waste, building debris was dumped on the property. And while all of that is true, from our understanding from the Regional Water Authority, there is no concern to our drinking water. Um, as far as we know from the tests that have been done so far, um, the contaminants are localized to the property. There's nothing demonstrable that has presented itself as a concern to the greater community or to the watershed. Um, so all along the property, you can look in and see through these fences and see the amazing sights. So as we virtually walk down from Leader Hill and past Seventh Day Adventist, we'll head down over to Putnam Avenue. And so there are there's three communities really that are represented. Um, you have Newhall, uh, which is majority Black and Brown community, uh, tons of homeowners. You have Whitneyville, a very mixed income neighborhood. And then you have Whitney Center, where many of our you have Whitney Center and Dunbar Davenport, where many of our elder community members have retired to. And so here are some pictures. And so for y'all who are familiar with the neighborhood, you might see my favorite post office. Uh, you might be familiar uh, uh, with Books and Company at the foot of Putnam Avenue, or the Playwright. And so part of this whole entire project, the town is working on complete streets, and there's an opportunity to connect the complete streets and bike paths from Whitney down over to Putnam and really have a safe opportunity for people to connect to this property in a contiguous way. And so we're going to walk down Putnam Avenue. Um, this spot that we took back in the summer, this is where the best possible entrance is to the property. And so there's a large entrance. As you can see, there's already access roads all throughout the property. Um, Logistically, this would make the best sense. Um, this, as you can see, this is a large area. Things like farmers markets or farm stands could be here, bathrooms, all different opportunities could be here. And so really, we are waiting now. Hopefully by May, we will get the test results that Olin Corporation has contracted out to a firm called WSP. And hopefully we'll get a better understanding of what contamination exists. There hasn't been really uh, any consistent testing for the better part of 15 years. So there's some testing here and there, but nothing holistic and conclusive that can give us a snapshot of what contamination it exists on the property currently and what things people should or shouldn't be concerned about. Um, but as you can see, these access roads go all around the ponds. Um, and so in many ways, it's already a park. So going down Putnam Ave, we're gonna head on to the rail trail spur to the right of the of this entrance. So if you're coming down Putnam going towards Dixwell, this is on the right hand side, just before you get into the shopping center. And so you'll walk up the ramp and get onto the Farmington Canal Trail, which has a very rich history. So the Farmington Canal Trail was built in 1835. Um, the rail line, because it used to have an actual train line, was built in 1847. And so there is a rail, remnants of a rail near the entrance, but because it's so snowy, we didn't get a chance to snap a picture of it. But this is a little bit farther up towards Brookdale Park, as you can see. And so the great thing about this property being adjacent to the Farmington Canal is that it connects all of our communities. The Farmington Canal Trail goes all the way down to Long Island Sound in New Haven, connects to Hamden, connects Newhall to Spring Glen, but then it stretches further and goes all the way up to Southington, and the trail is not completely connected, but in many parts it's connected, and it goes all the way up to Northampton, Massachusetts. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to keep this open space preserved and an opportunity for people to really enjoy it. So as we walk down the Farmington Canal, you'll see views like this, where you can just peer through the trees and see these massive lakes. We call it 6 lakes rather than 6 ponds because lakes sound sexier than ponds. And so um, the lake, as you will, you can see these amazing views. And so there's a great multitude of waterfowl that you'll see. I've seen great blue herons, I've seen swans, I've seen wood ducks, I've seen deers on the property. Um, and so there's a real opportunity to be close to nature. And anyone who's gone, the the land trust used to do guided tours. And so anyone who had the opportunity to do that in the early aughts would know that this is one of the quietest places in the region. You go there and you can hear a pin drop despite being near two throughways, you hear nothing, right? And so a really great opportunity. So this, as we continue to walk down, the picture you saw before, if you just turn around, this is what it looks like on the other side. And so this is another possible access point on Ogden Ave and Berkshire Court. You can see some of the hickory trees. You can see dogwood trees, birch trees, uh, tons of maples, tons of pines. Um, and so really, really beautiful forest, really beautiful canopy, especially in the fall. So as we walk down the Farmington Canal, eventually you'll hit Treadwell. And just before hitting Treadwell, um, you'll see that the path, it, it, it's naturally something that connects to the bike path. Something that is at the foot of Treadwell is Eli's memorial. There was a young man, Elijah Gomes, who was murdered on the bike path a couple of years ago. Um, so there's a memorial for him. Um, when the time comes, Kathy will drop in a link to the website for Eli's Garden of Healing, a tangential project. They're working on creating a space of reflection that connects to this property to honor Eli's life and legacy. And so there's amazing things already happening and connecting it and bringing it together, giving us the opportunity to reflect on what's so important to us and to be in nature uh, is so important. And so all of y'all, if you have a chance opportunity, please look at Eli's Garden of Healing. There are bunkers uh, across the street from Whitney Center that connect into a park, Dina Cola Park. And so they're hoping to build on top of the old bunkers, kind of a skyline uh, park, pocket park. So I'm hoping that comes together, hoping that y'all will support this project and that project as well. And so there's a great multitude of connection points all throughout the property. So this parcel connects to Whitneyville, of course. It connects to the trail system, the Mill River Watershed Trail. And as you go throughout go down the bike path, you'll have amazing views of two of the lakes that exist. Lakes. Um, as we get to Treadwell, I always like to remind people we would turn off of the bike path, go on to Treadwell. Treadwell is a very, very, very busy street. Unfortunately, the town does not put in sidewalks. And so uh, if you go and do this tour in person yourself, please be very careful and cognizant. Cars speed up and down the road. And so we want people to be very careful. And so as you bend the corner of Leader Hill, uh, you'll see that there is uh, fixtures for mounts where they used to have machine guns. And so they used to test machine guns on the property, 50 cal, really big bullets on the property. And tons of those casings are all over the ponds that can still be found, as well as rail spikes from the trail can still be found. And so as you round the corner, you'll get to this view just behind Whitney Center, which is a senior home. And there's this amazing view that you can kind of see most of the property just behind the Whitney Center. Um, you know, there's a great multitude of opportunities for this parcel. Uh, and in the last 3 years, we've come really far from not really knowing where this project could go to testing being done, and that big meeting we had last year uh, with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the State Health Department. So things are really moving forward, and we're looking for y'all to stay engaged and to be in community and help us think about ways that uh, when it comes to fruition and comes together, how to make this park accessible to the most amount of people. And so I'll pass it along to Kathy and Miss Hayes and open up the opportunity for y'all to ask questions and give your thoughts and reflections.
Thanks, Justin. So we do have one question so far in the Q&A here from Rick, who says, couldn't this project be brought to the voters of Hamden as a referendum? Justin, you want to talk about that? How this is going to come together?
Yeah, that's a great question. Could this be brought to referendum? I guess it could. Right now, uh, the property is owned entirely by Olin, so this is not a town parcel. Olin pays about $20,000 a year for 100 acres. Uh, really good deal. Back 2 years ago, we passed a resolution by the Legislative Council. I was on the council at the time to support the effort of bringing this project together into to see this parcel open up to the community. Um, I guess it could go to a referendum about supporting this project, but I don't think the town wants to own this parcel. I don't think the town uh, is in a situation to own this property, and so hopefully we can get the state to take on this parcel. And Senator Looney was at the perimeter walk and talked about the possibility and his support for possibly the state taking over this property. But that's a good question. We definitely want as many Hamden community members involved envisioning this property.
Thanks, Justin. So I'll invite you to, if you have any other questions, either type them in the Q&A, or if you'd like to raise your hand. We have about 30 people here, so we can probably manage that. And in the meantime, I'd like to ask Elizabeth Hayes to talk a little bit about the related cleanup that happened in the Newhall neighborhood prior to this, which was also involving Olin and Deep, and which she was really helped to spearhead and kind of make that happen. So could you talk a little bit more about that? Give people some background on that project. We need you to unmute first. Or maybe I need to unmute you. Let's see. There you go.
Okay. The project started, I would say the community started making waves about getting the property or getting the residential area cleaned up in 1999. That's when I came on board. There were problems with the school in that some of the teachers or the personnel were getting ill. There were complaints and there were air pollution, the smell at the middle school. And then the question was asked, if this is actually happening at the middle school, what impact is all of this having on the community? If there's contamination at the middle school, and the way the topography is situated in the middle school, that property, it's uphill, so, and the water is washing down into the community. So we were concerned about whether contaminants are being drained down into the community residential area. So we formed there was a task force that was formed with a group of professors from Yale, Southern, let's just say all the surrounding university. It was about eight professors, and they did a study to determine if there was a contaminant so that we could start initiating the process of remediating, or at least get the state involved to compel the responsible parties to do the cleanup. So we got that done. That meant the responsible parties at that time for the community property were Regional Water Authority, the State Board of Education, the town of Hamden, and Olin Corporation. So we proceeded on until we got the Attorney General to compel the responsible parties to into an agreement, a consent decree, to clean up the property. And I was very much involved with the entire community in seeing that the property got cleaned up, but with Olin and a lot of stakeholders and the people within the community, not just in the Southern Hamden, but all over Hamden, the total community, because many people had once lived in Southern Hamden and then moved to other communities, Spring Glen, Dunbar, places like that. So that was my contribution.
Great, thank you. And Justin, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the concept of environmental justice, because you mentioned that earlier, but I'm not sure that everybody's familiar with what that means and why the Six Lakes Park Coalition sees the conversion of this property into a park as an opportunity for restorative justice. You're muted too.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, you know, brownfields like these are not uncommon. And so brownfields are properties, parcels that have had a lot of industrial use. Um, so in our case, we had Winchester, right? Before this whole entire neighborhood of Newhall was built on a swamp, right? And they filled in the swamp. Some places they put fill as deep as 22 feet and filled in the swamp. And then after that, it was the municipal airfield. And after that, it was the municipal dump. And then they built GI homes. Um, and after that, you had white flight uh, from this part of Hamden, and you had a lot of black and brown workers worked for Winchester and Olin move into this community. And so this is not uncommon or untold story. This happens to many communities all around. And as this community changes, once again, you have a lot of immigrant families, such as mine, my family immigrating from Jamaica, moving into these communities. Not all of these detriments were known to community members as they moved and migrated into these communities, but there were things that were known, right? And so the contamination on this property was known by community members in the neighborhood for generations, right? People knew that the sky would fill with smoke and it'd be hard to breathe. People knew that dumping was going on the property. And so those historical impacts and continued detriments affect people. And so this is really an opportunity to have restorative justice, acknowledge the past and the harm that was done, whether it was intentional or unintentional, doesn't really make a difference. People live with the consequences of that. But this is the opportunity for all of us to come together, address the past, and have something better for it, right? Have a community space. And so tons of us have different ideas of what could be done with the property. One of my ideas is, right, having a cultural park to highlight the different aspects of our community and have opportunities for people to reflect and have discussion and bring about the multitude of diversity uh, that makes this community now. Um, Newhall used to be known as Little Germany. Because there was a ton of German community members. That's not so much true today. But I think being able to highlight history and to honor the past and move forward is something that we can do. And so that's restorative justice, right? Looking at the past and the consequences of that and moving forward. And hopefully, right, um, this property can be preserved and bring about the changes that we want to see.
Great, thanks, Justin. So does anybody else have questions about Six Lakes for us?
Concerns, laments, manifestos.
I don't know about manifestos.
I'll take them.
So I'll just mention we have a couple of ways for you to get involved coming up. One of them is that the Six Lakes Park Coalition will be embarking on, and kind of we already started this in November at the Perimeter Walk, but we'll be more formally embarking on a community vision process where we'll be reaching out to the direct neighbors of the park, but also the greater New Haven area, everybody who may benefit from a park here, and we'll be asking questions about how the community envisions what could be possible on this property, and that process will be starting soon. So especially if you sign up for our newsletter, the link is in the chat. You'll be among the first to know about that. But we will be doing some pretty robust outreach to make sure that we hear from a lot of people about that vision. And the other thing I want to let you know is that we anticipate having another community meeting coming up sometime hopefully this spring. So we had one in the end of June last year, which some of you may have been at. Again, we had about 100 people at that meeting, and representatives, somebody just mentioned this earlier, the representatives from DEEP and the Department of Health were there to give a presentation and answer questions. And once we have some results from the testing that was done this past year, they have agreed to come back. In fact, they agreed to come back on an annual basis and give the community an update. And so again, we look forward to holding that community meeting. We would love to have you all come out and participate in that. And we'll be letting you know through a number of different channels, including that newsletter, when that's scheduled. And so Aaron has just put something in the chat saying the 1910 plan map that Justin mentioned, which shows the Six Lakes property as part of an emerald necklace of parks across Greater New Haven, can be viewed here. And he's got the link for you if you're interested in that, original plan, which is really cool. It looks like we've got some more questions now in the Q&A. So let's see. So Mary Ellen is asking, what is the status on Olin actually doing the cleanup?
That is to come, right? So the first and that's a great question. The first part is the testing, right? And so they went and did water testing, tested the different ponds, took some water samples from chutes that they already had from the past, as well as making new chutes to grab water, and did some ground sampling, mostly in the southern end of the property, where we know there's 5 areas of concern, and those are the 5 areas that Olin knows that they have a ton of contaminants. And so they did that testing. After we get the results from that testing, DEEP will see, right, whether there's a need for more testing, additional testing, or if it's appropriate to move on to do a site plan, and then decide to clean up. And so that is the process. The actuality of Olin cleaning it up, I'm very optimistic, and I'm a very pessimistic person. I like to think of myself as an optimistic pessimist, right? But I'm very, very optimistic. They are moving along. Within the last year, we've gone from, hey, you should think about this, to having communication with Olin, and now them doing the testing. So I'm very, very encouraged. The only thing that could slow down the process of cleanup is if there's large concern, right, in contamination. And then also the part that we're trying to get ahead of, which is end use, right? And so we're trying to get people involved so that we can figure out end use, so that as soon as the opportunity comes for us to start to clean up, we're not wasting any time about talking about visioning and getting a shared vision of what this could be. We can get the ball rolling as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I just want to add a main point here. The process or getting this done, it's going to take a while. And one of the objectives of having this webinar is to get people involved. We're going to have to apply some pressure. I'm going to be a little bit more stern than Justin was. We're going to have to apply a little bit more pressure, because you're asking Olin to clean up something. It's their property. They don't have to do it. If no pressure, political pressure I'm talking about, is put on Olin, we'll be here another 200 years, another 50 years. So we're asked to participate, to help us when we start a campaign, a write-in campaign or petition campaign. We want to send that, we would like to have you to sign the petition, and we would like to send that to the legislative delegation of Hamden. And so that they can apply pressure to Deep, and Deep can apply pressure to Olin, so that we can get this cleanup in a very short time, because we have some people who are looking forward to have this park complete and usable, because that person, I know a couple of people who are in their 90s and they do not have time to wait around. So yes, we need your help to apply pressure to Deep, and from Deep to Olin.
That's kind of related to another question in here. Someone wrote, is Olin supportive of these efforts? Does somebody want to talk about how what a consent decree is?
Yeah, so right, Olin and Deep, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, right, get together. The original consent decree was from the EPA, and Deep is the agency that is in charge of holding Olin accountable. And so they renewed and looked at the original consent decree and said, okay, what things make sense, what things don't make sense. Back in the 70s, cleanup standards, they basically said you had to clean up everything under the sun. And as we know with these brownfields, contaminants can last a very, very long time. And so it's not realistic. And so Olin and Deep got together and talked through things that could be possible and what responsibilities Olin has. And they came to a new agreement. And in that new agreement, right, Olin is on board, where they're like, yep, we contaminated the property. We are going to clean it all up. The real question is, how long is that going to take, and to what standards, right? And the standards can be residential, they can be commercial, they can be industrial. Those things have to be ironed out, and that will also be determined partly by the data that we receive in terms of contamination. But Olin has agreed, right? Olin isn't hiding, isn't shirking the responsibility. They're at the table right now, and they're working with Deep. And I'd like to think in good faith right now that those conversations are going well and going along well. And they've also been in communication with us, right? Which hasn't always been the case, but is the case currently.
Ms. Hayes, anything else?
No.
There's a question here. In light of this project, is there any renewed interest in getting sidewalks on Treadwell? Justin, you mentioned how dangerous that is to walk on Treadwell.
It was in the queue before I left the council a couple of months ago. So hopefully it will be one of the new sidewalk projects. I think it will only be on one side of the street. I don't think the street is conducive to do both sides of the street. But it was talked about. So I don't know if the allocation will actually come through. But if I hear anything, well, we will definitely let you know about opportunities to advocate for that.
We also have a question here. Is there any thought to doing a high quality video tour, photos, ads to influence more people? Yes, absolutely. We would love to do those things. They are on our wish list, but money. So I will say that there is a lot of funding available at both the state and the federal level right now. We're in a there's a really great confluence of opportunities happening right now, and they're not going to last forever. But a lot of that funding tends to be for working on the park itself. either land acquisition or park development, that kind of thing. So yes, we absolutely do have some of those things in mind. I would say if you or anyone you know is a professional videographer who would like to donate some time to Six Lakes, we would love to talk to you. Please reach out to me at Save the Sound. It's Kathy Sepiel, K Sepiel, just as you can see my name on the screen here, at savethesound.org. I can drop that in the chat as well. We would love to hear from you. Likewise, if you're a professional photographer, if you have any kind of connection that would help us pro bono, we would love to hear from you. And we are actively seeking grant funding. That's one of the things that Save the Sound brings to the table here, is a professional grant writing staff that that's able to go out and help look for money and also accept funds, because Save the Sound is a 501c3, but Six Lakes Park Coalition is not. So we are able to help facilitate the receiving of funds as well. So we're working on it. That's a great question. Thank you.
And there is on the website a drone aerial
Little
video.
drone footage.
Yeah.
And then we have somebody who asked, who decides the standard to which this site will be improved, residential versus industrial versus commercial?
I'll say there's two answers to that, right? There is the legal answer, which is, right, it's up to Olin and Deep. But the other answer, right, even private property owners, right? Olin is a private property owner. I would argue they have a responsibility to the community, right? And so us letting them know to what standards we want them to clean up, and us letting Deep know, I feel can be impactful if we're forceful, as Ms. Hayes was saying, right? Ultimately, it's up to Deep what remediation standards make sense based off of what the use is, the proposed use is by Olin. But I believe that can be influenced by community concerns and input.
I would just like to add that the community has a great influence in determining the end use, and the end use tends to drive the standards that's being that the property is being cleaned up to. So depending on what the end use is, it tends to drive the standards for the property, the final use of the property. So if it's a park, if it's recreational, if it's active recreational, then it becomes more or less residential standards. So this is again where we would like to get the community involved in determining what use would you like to see this park be as, you know.
Great, thank you. So looks like we're out of questions and we're almost out of time. So perfectly done. It was great to see all of you here. We're so glad that you're interested. Again, in the chat is the link to sign up for the Six Lakes Park Coalition newsletter, the link to sign the petition, which Elizabeth Hayes was telling you is so important as part of our advocacy. I dropped my email in there in case anyone has resources they'd like to let us know about to share with us. So again, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your involvement and we hope we will see you again.
Thank you. Safe travels all.
Thank you.